Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kenda Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of January 17th, 2022, a date of marriage of June 2019, and she is not familiar with the terms. In fact, that's part of her question. So I received this on a Facebook PM instead, so it's a little bit longer, and I may stop or I may not stop in between. So she says, we met in 2016, and I discovered the affair in March of 2022, which was 2 months after bomb drop. I filed for divorce 2 days after I discovered the affair. When I discovered it, he did not know that I had discovered it. I have also re-edited and revised this to make it shorter since it was so long. So a lot of the words you're going to hear are actually my revision. She says, what type of MLCer is he? And she's looking at contact and energy type. And she was really interested in the contact types. So first thing I'm going to go over, I sent a link to her, and I will try and put one in below about the contact type article and the clinging boomerang article, because I just expand on the clinging boomerang, on what they are. So the contact types, we have distant and close contactors. The two types of distant contactors are vanisher and an off and on. The type of close contactor is boomerang, and then there's clinging boomerang, but you could add the clinging description to another kind. It's really about them being a boomerang. The clinging term is about the emotional connection, and sometimes we don't feel that at all. It seems like they might contact us, but there's no emotional connection, or it's negative. So vanisher, you don't hear from them at all. That means that they don't respond to you if you say something, if you initiate contact. I don't mean if you say something because they're in the room, because that would be a contact. And if you hear from them once or twice a year, that's a vanisher. If you hear from them every 3 months or so, that would be, so every 3 months would be up to 4 times a year. Now you're a bit more into off and on. More often than that, I do call them a boomerang, but it's just a spectrum. Notice 1 to 2 times a year, 4 times a year, anything more, boomerang. So I make the boomerang really big. And so with some, maybe they're more emotionally distant than others. Then we get the clinging boomerang. The clinging boomerang is where you have an emotional connection. This one, at least in the beginning, is showing clinging boomerang tendencies. And I would say, as a general rule right now, he's been a boomerang. And notice with boomerang, if you contact every 3 months, you're an off and on. So does that mean every 2 months? Which isn't very often, it feels like. That still makes you a boomerang, right? So she says he initially monstered on social media for 3 to 4 months. He moved in with the alienator quickly after bomb drop, and then they started renting a house together a month later in March of 2022. They seem happy on social media, but he doesn't post about her or publicly profess his love for her as he did for me. For about the first month after bomb drop, he came to the house 5 to 6 days a week. That's why I say boomerang. There's no question on that in the beginning, at least. And it's also very common in the beginning, so I don't really solidify the contact type till later. But according to the times, if these are correct, and this wasn't bomb drop of 2023, but 2022, we are well past a year. We're 18 months in. She says he reached out 3 times across a 6-week period, and I had to reorder some of this, so I wasn't sure when. I wasn't even sure if anything was in 2023 or 2022, but he reached out 3 times across a 6-week period to ask me to do things for him. We had a temporary hearing in May. I'm assuming it was 2023, but it could have been 2022 because she didn't give a year with that. And things went well. He looked terrible. In June, I sent him a sweet message on our anniversary, and he said, I'm sorry for hurting you. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just said thank you. Was that a bad answer? No, it wasn't a bad answer. It was just, you shouldn't really expand upon it at this point because that would be pushing. So saying thank you was fine. To test the water, I've twice sent him a text message about something good that's happened in my life, and there was no response. And I like how you said to test the waters. So we just test it and then we stop. When I discovered the affair in March of 2022, he didn't know that I knew. He said he wanted to start talking again then, provided we didn't fight. We did fight a lot. And she's now referring to, from what it sounds like, pre-bomb drop. We did fight a lot, and I was often the initiator, or I kept it going. And that's my term for it, initiator, kept it going. She says I own that. He was abusing drugs and alcohol, which stressed me out. I wasn't supportive because I didn't see him making an effort to get clean. But in the 5 months since legal separation, and this is why I was a little confused on the 2022-2023, she says legal separation, 5 months since, I've heard from him a few times. And we're now in September of 2023, so it was legal separation 5 months ago in April of this year, which is 2023, which means it was a little over a year after bomb drop. So I'm not sure on timeline in that sense. She says, I heard from him, they were just random, kind of unimportant or very important business things. He left something, he didn't respond. He left something and he didn't respond when I answered back. Question about taxes. The check is still sitting here. He hasn't done anything about it. And a question about car insurance. So not things that are emotionally connecting. As of now, I haven't heard from him for 2 months. And this is the longest I've gone. How can I go about contacting and reconnecting? As his limerence continues, I feel he's just forgetting about me. I was upset about the affair and I filed for divorce. How do I let him know I don't actually want a divorce? I feel like I should clean up my side of the street. How do I let him know that I want to reconcile? We don't have kids together, but we do have kids from our previous marriages. He doesn't ask or talk to them or contact about them, but I have a relationship with his son. When I saw him last, his son, he asked me if I was dating someone, and I said, absolutely not. I'm still married to your father. And he said, you need to start dating someone. You need to move on. Dad's really happy. I told him I hoped he would remember and come back to me, and he said he didn't see that happening. He said I need to find someone that made me happy, that I deserved a good man. I told him that I found a good man in his father. So there's a few things. First thing, I'm going to address the kid part really quickly because that's right there. First thing, I wouldn't give any credibility to the child saying, you need to move on, Dad's really happy. It also sounds like there are some other issues and his child may have some, either some traumas or not recognize what healthy issues look like. And he's saying Dad's happy. But Dad, you've said, was using drugs and alcohol. And this is his child from a previous marriage, and you haven't had a very long marriage. So I don't know what your husband is like as a stable force, as a responsible force in his son's life. And so there is the possibility that his son doesn't really recognize or truly know what a happy, good relationship looks like. And so he thinks this is it. So there's that. And then he uses the language, you need to find someone to make you happy. That's standard language, but unfortunately it's not something we should be doing. Other people don't make you happy. I mean, you deserve a good man. There's all of that. That's a standard things people say. Sometimes they just want, you need to move on. You need to stop hanging on. Yeah, I care about you. There's those. But I wouldn't take what he says about my dad's happy. He's not coming back. How does he know? So I do want to ask you the question that you hate and that everybody asks you. But when I ask you, I'm asking you. I'm not complaining about you. I'm not challenging it as, why would you do that? Why do you want to reconcile? Why do you want to be reconciled with him? Because you need to answer that for yourself. And I want you to answer that in the, you fought a lot, but you've owned that. And you're going to work on your side of the street. Yes, you should do that. But he was abusing alcohol and abusing drugs. Do you really want to reconcile with that person before that is resolved? Is it resolved now, and why? How do you know it's resolved? Because you don't have contact with him. So what is it in you? It seems to me from this last question, how can I reconnect with him? He's forgetting about me. I just want him to know that I want to reconcile. I got the feeling that instead of want to reconcile, it felt like I want to insert the word need to reconcile. It was a neediness, as a fear. And reconciliation may be something that would be a wonderful thing for you, but it's not yet. It's not yet until both parties are healed. Both parties recognize what went wrong and how to fix it and how to not do those things again. And both parties make amends. And if he's not doing any of that, I don't want to, when you say there's a difference between wanting to reconcile and standing for your marriage. Because when I would have told Chuck, I want to reconcile, I would have said, I'm standing for my marriage. We're not ready for reconciliation. The want to reconcile is, I want to reconcile when we are ready. And it's a we, not just a you are ready. And it might be when you are ready because I'm ready now. In your case, you're not ready. So if you phrased it, how do I let him know that I am open to reconciliation when? Sometimes you might not phrase the when to me, but you need to have that when it is time, when it is appropriate, when we are ready, when we are healed and ready to work more on move forward toward healing together. Because that is the really big important part. You're describing things that could be midlife crisis because there's an affair involved. But because your relationship was short, you met in 2016, and that feels like a long time ago. That's that's 7.5 years or so that you've been together in that, and then 7.5 years since then, up to now. But we're going to take 18 months off of that. So about 5 years or so that you were together. 16 to 22, 6 years, not quite 6 years together. And 2.5 of them, was it? 3.5 of them married? Not quite. Not quite that. Okay. So it was a short-term relationship, and there's been a previous marriage. And I don't want to put a judgment onto that as though that's a really bad sign. But I also want to look at this and say, is there a pattern in this? Is there a pattern of abandoning? Is there a pattern of instability? Or did you meet an MLCer, fall in love with him? You may not have been an alienator if there wasn't another relationship. But let's say you still met somebody who was in a midlife crisis, and that was the person you thought you knew, and he was doing all of the limerence with you and professing of his love for you. And you thought that's who he was. And he was doing drugs and alcohol, which is MLCers do go back to that. Or maybe that was his pattern before that, and he's had a whole longer history. So some of the things that I'm looking at when I read your things are not only his own stability, but yours. I feel like there's a codependence going on. I feel like there's a codependence because you seem so desperate to get back with somebody who is so severely broken right now. He's broken right now. And so right now, I don't want you doing that. I want you healing. It's not just cleaning up your side of the street. It's not just, yes, I was a fighter. I'm going to take accountability for that. It's, why was I a fighter? It's what do I need to do to grow into who I am and who I'm going to be? I want the self-development part, not simply the, I did this thing that I take responsibility for this negative action. But how do I move forward with it? And how do I move forward into grace and positive actions? How do I move forward into who I'm going to be, into my midlife transition to the next person that is meant for me, that is meant for me to be, the person I'm becoming. I want you to focus on that rather than how do I get him back? He's going to forget about me if I'm not in his life right now. Because if you're the right person for him, it's going to be there. But right now, nobody is the right person for him. Even if he has somebody, nobody's the right person because he's toxic. If he's using drugs and alcohol, he's toxic. If he's a dry drunk, in other words, he's not using anymore, but he hasn't recovered. He hasn't gone through the recovery. He's not ready. So I'm going to recommend that you consider going to Al-Anon. Al-Anon is the meetings for the partners or family and members or friends of the person who is using substances or addicted. They will help you with detachment and codependence, because the codependence is their wheelhouse. We here with midlife crisis get the detachment side of it, and many of us have been codependent, but many of us haven't. The 12-steppers, codependence. They're really going to be able to target you on that and find out why. Why is it that you, at this point, and I could be misreading, feel so desperate that you're going to lose him, that he will forget about you, and you need to do something? Because you know how you let him know you don't want a divorce, you say it. You could actually be upfront and say, I am so sorry I filed for divorce. It's not really what I wanted. And if he hasn't done any responses to this divorce process, you might be able to stop it. You might be able to just go to your lawyer. If he's responded, then the only way to stop it is for both of you to agree and stop it together. You can do that. But it's not going to change things right now. And let's say he stopped seeing the alienator, came home. It might change something, but it's not going to solve the root problems right now. That's something else. And that means that you both can just settle back in and go back to where you are today, which is where you don't want to be, separate with him living with someone else. So it's more than cleaning up his side of the street. It's figuring out, not just I cleaned things so that they look neat, but now what do I do with this? I have a beautiful street. What do I do? What do I do with the beautiful street now? It's clean, but it's just sitting there. Now develop that street. That's where you're really going to get to the key of what needs to go on, is the development that you're going to do once you've cleaned up your street. I am not sure that I actually answered what you wanted me to. I'm not sure that I answered fully on contact types, because he's a boomerang. I mean, we can say boomerang. I'm not sure whether this is midlife crisis. And it may very well be. But there are those who just were never stable as well. And so those ones may seem like they're just always in a midlife crisis, because that's who they are. Oh, my husband's always been a frat boy, party boy, narcissist, or that somebody's brother who never married. They've always been that way. Some people are like that. Some people don't fully develop. Some people don't determine their identity, or their identity is finally just party boy, who is, your friends with benefits type. What is yours? He clearly wants relationships because he married you. He was married before. He wants to be that. But I don't know that he has the skills. And I don't know that you have the skills. And I'm saying I don't know. I want you to build those skills. And if you build them, then you are going to be ready for him when he is ready, or for, as your stepson has said, a new relationship. And when you are ready for it, one of the readinesses is like, yeah, I'm okay with it being somebody else. And you can go with another fish in the sea route, which means, well, he's just another fish in the sea. He's part of the dating pool. I'm not taking him out of that. Or maybe he's out of it until he's better. Once he's better, and if I'm not in a permanent relationship, yeah, if he comes to me or I initiate something and he says, sure, we can start dating. But you need to do it with healing. You need to do it with therapy. You need to do it at that point, even then, to make sure that that's going to work. Okay? I hope this was helpful. I might have gotten some of the timelines mixed up a little bit due to the year 2022, but 2023 was never in there, but it felt like some of it was recent. So I'm not sure, but let me know if you have any more questions, and I will see everybody in the next question.